We finally arrived in the Forbidden Land. Our stolen legendary sword in hand, it's time to see if the myths are true, and if we can truly revive the dead. As we enter the ancient temple, we begin our journey through Shadow of the Colossus. Shadow of the Colossus originally released in 2005 for the PlayStation 2, and it has remained a cult classic to this day, hailed by many as an absolute must-play for any gamer. We control Wonder, a young man who has stolen away an ancient sword and traveled with his horse Agro to a forbidden land to resurrect a young girl who has died far too young due to a cursed fate. A voice reaches out to us in this land, granting us instructions and solidifying the myth that perhaps the power to resurrect the dead can be obtained here. We obey, and at this point, our journey truly begins. Well, let's save some of the good parts for later. Let's climb our way up the colossal story of Shadow of the Colossus. If you enjoyed today's video, please be sure to like and subscribe as it really helps the channel out. Thank you. Let's start with the gameplay. The gameplay is relatively simple. As Wonder, we are tasked with taking down 16 Colossi in order to help the mysterious voices. Yes, I said voices, we'll get to that in a bit, that are claiming they can revive our female companion from beyond the grave. We have a sword and a bow to accomplish these tasks, and our trusty horse Agro to help us get around the expansive, yet deserted wasteland of a map. These Colossi are all somewhat of a puzzle and require unique strategies to defeat each one that essentially boils down to climb the beast, find its weak point, and stab it with your sword. Some are relatively straightforward and just amazingly fun to conquer, such as the 12th Colossus, whose back you have to scale to guide him to a tower to expose his weak stomach, while some of the Colossi were extremely annoying to me, such as the 9th Colossus, who causes you to wait an extremely long time while you wait for him to slowly walk over a geyser to tip him over. Yeah, really, this was the only Colossus I really hated, as he was such a pain, and I couldn't bear how long this fight took, though admittedly, I was probably doing something wrong. Anyways, during our 16 fights, we have a health meter and a stamina meter. Health is self-explanatory, while stamina is used to maintain our grip, which is important as we need to grip the different beasts in order to stab their weak points. So you always need to be managing your grip bar, especially considering falling off some of these beasts can result in an extremely long process to climb them again. Excluding the aforementioned 9th Colossus, and maybe the underwater electric sea snake Colossus, I really enjoyed these fights. My favorite was probably Colossus 10, as riding around the sand on Agro and trying to snipe his eyes felt intense, yet incredibly satisfying. But honestly, all 16 Colossi were an absolute cinematic and musical spectacle. I mean, this game is beautiful, and the soundtracks all fit the beast perfectly. Like some peanut butter and jelly, I love it. Also, in the eerily empty wasteland on our ways to the Colossi are just a few different things we can interact with. There are just a couple different animals, some fruit to boost our health, and lizards to boost our stamina, and finally old shrines to pray at for healing, typically before bosses. That's pretty much it. I think the atmosphere of this game is absolutely killer, and that we know this land is forbidden, but surely you expect at least one other person to be here. Yet that person never comes. All that's left are the Colossi and some old ruins. This land is truly abandoned, which makes you wonder, why did the people leave the Colossi and the mysterious voices behind?
Was you the last also? View ours is view. Equal kizado you lola. Is pozaiku. Au mizukikyo. You are I'm
going to preface this by saying the story is pretty open for interpretation. At this point, the game is 19 years old. Sorry if that makes you feel old, but there are a lot of theories out there, and we'll discuss some of them here. But let's start with the facts. The game begins with a mysterious monologue from a masked man as we pan to our hero riding his horse to an old castle ruin. We control Wonder on a quest to revive a young dead girl named Mono, who he states suffers a cursed fate. We know this land is forbidden, and Wonder has stolen an ancient sword in hopes of using it to revive Mono. We are greeted by a voice named Dorman, who sometimes has a male voice actor and sometimes a female voice, more on that in a bit, who tells us that if we slay the 16 Colossi represented by the idols, they can help us, but warn us that the consequences may be dire. Well, Wonder doesn't care, and we set out anyway. With every Colossus we defeat, we are filled with black smoke and awaken surrounded by smoky silhouettes, with each silhouette representing a slain Colossus. We also see a vision each time we slay a Colossus, with a voice becoming a little clearer every time. After defeating 12 Colossus, we learn Wonder has been followed by our masked narrator from the beginning of the game, as well as some henchmen. Time is short as Dorman tells us eventually we need to hurry to slay the last Colossus, as the masked man, named Iman, and his henchmen are close. A brutally sad scene sees our horse friend Agro sacrifice himself to save us, and wow, that hurts the heart a bit. but nevertheless, we continue on to slay the final Colossus. We are then returned to the shrine where we have gone full demon mode. Horns, pale skin and all, where Amon commands his men to put us down. Well, we don't stay down long as we learn Dorman has tricked us. Well, at least that's how the community commonly refers to it, but I'd argue we weren't tricked at all, as we were initially warned that the consequences could be dire if we helped the voice. Anyways, we have freed Dorman, who was split into 16 pieces. Each piece was held within one of the Colossus we slayed, and had become a host for the old demon beast. We promptly slaughter some of the henchmen before being bested ourselves and are treated to a final cutscene of Amon and some followers leaving across a bridge while we shrink to a human size, seemingly defeated. However, it's not over yet. Mono gets up, and wow, the old darkness monster actually kept its promise? Now that's the plot twist of the century. And hold on, Agro is alive? Who said this was a sad game? If the animal lives, that's all that matters. Who cares about these other guys? Okay, well, jokes aside, Mono finds a horned baby where we were previously slain and takes him with no shock or fear to the garden atop the shrine, where our game concludes. Okay, now that that's finished, let's get into some theories and meanings here. First, the game is commonly referred to as a sad one, as many of the Colossi we encounter actually don't want to fight us. Some of them seemingly avoid us until we start going all crazy stabby on them, and they have no choice, but usually by then, it's too late. Some of them, however, are rather hostile, particularly the later ones. Now what makes this tragic is the Colossi seem to be more than just walking prisons and pieces of Dorman. They seem to have their own emotions and serve as neutral creatures in a world seemingly touched by evil. And it just so happens, we are somewhat unknowingly helping that evil in the slaughter of these likely innocent creatures. You get that? Slaughtering innocents for what is likely evil, not to mention the giants writhing in pain and bleeding when you stab them doesn't help. I don't know about you, but that does make me feel a little bit sad. And if you're even a little bit observant, this feeling will hit you long before the final Colossus, making you question whether you should even finish this journey or not. But at least the horse survives, right? Right? Now on the other hand, there is the question if Dorman is actually evil. I mean, it certainly seems that way considering he's composed of darkness and shadows and we sprout horns when hosted by him. But again, the game leaves a lot to player interpretation. There were times when I felt like Amon was actually the evil one, and I sympathized with Dorman a bit, but both could also be true. Maybe Amon and Dorman are evil, or maybe just one is. Now it is super likely Dorman is evil. I mean, he's essentially the devil of this world, but he keeps his promise and resurrects the girl, and he gives fair warning to Wonder that consequences will come from his actions. So there is consideration necessary when considering Dorman's alignment. I would argue he's at least fair, if anything. In relation to my prior point that he kept his promise, another thing I think is possible is that Mono is possessed at the end of the game, just like Wonder. Mono's lack of reaction to a newborn horned baby, alongside the fact Dorman had both a male and female voice, seem to point to this possibility. I mean, he's supposed to be able to raise the dead, which typically comes with control, right? I wouldn't be surprised if Dorman had possessed both of our main characters and his entire plan was completely self-serving. He warned you, Wonder. On the other hand, Dorman does mention he's only borrowing Wonder's body, which one could write off as typical villain dialogue, or could see as Dorman being true to his word, as he has been up to this point. It's interesting when we reach the roof of the chapel, Mono is glowing a bit and all the animals approach her. Perhaps Dorman is not evil or good, but both. Something like yin and yang. Wonder inherited the dark touch of Dorman, while Mono took on the pure light of Dorman. Just something to consider, and there definitely seems to be some evidence to support this, considering her glow and Snow White abilities with animals. Without a clear reason as to why Dorman was sealed provided to us, it's only possible to speculate at this point. I choose to believe the game doesn't have a clear antagonist and a specific answer to the question of who is the villain. Rather, it's different for every player. Different people will view different characters as the antagonist based on who they sympathize with. Some see Wonder as the villain for its carelessness and assistance in the slaughter of possibly innocent Colossi. Some view Dorman as the villain for his possession and arguable manipulation of Wonder, while some view Amon as the villain for his hostility and aggression. Plus, it also seems like he's the one that had Mono sacrificed in the first place. As long as you don't think Agro is the villain, then you are completely valid. He's a good boy. Dorman may be some sort of pagan god with no clear moral alignment, but the fact of the matter is, he at least temporarily possessed Wonder and left behind in his wake a horned newborn that Mono essentially had no surprise reaction to. This is actually a direct reference to a previous game released by the developers known as Ico. That's right, this makes this game a prequel, and don't be surprised if a future video on Ico comes out, because this lore is so rich. I love it. Now what does the horn baby mean? Well, I won't go into too much detail about Ico here, but essentially in the game the horned children are seen as cursed and are sacrificed. However, Mono seems to embrace the baby here. So what caused this changed perspective? One likely explanation is that Wonder has become cursed for his unforgivable action. He freed a sealed beast through his slaughter of the Colossi, and as a result became marked, reborn to live a cursed life in the Forbidden Lands. The marked explanation alone holds some weight, as at the very least it seems clear Wonder has received his horns due to his close contact with Dorman. Now whether it's a cursed life he's doomed to, or simply a mark of Dorman is not clear. But the cursed life seems more likely considering the plot of Ico. Perhaps Amon dropping the sword into the pool when escaping cleansed Wonder of Dorman, but the horns were left behind as a reminder of his actions and unforgivable sins. Essentially, a baby is widely regarded as the purest form of life, too innocent to commit any sin, so that is what Wonder is turned into when Dorman is cleansed from him. But he remains marked due to his past actions and having been touched by Dorman himself. This explanation does seem to lean a lot closer to the theory that Dorman is the evil devil, but it's what makes the most sense to me. Let me know what you think. Well, with the bridge to the Forbidden Lands destroyed, it seems we will be stuck here for ages with all our questions of the plot. But theory crafting is always loads of fun, so no complaints here. Shadow of the Colossus is a brilliant game that leaves much to the imagination, yet provides a thought-provoking experience that will leave you scratching your head for weeks upon finishing the game. While the gameplay is not the most innovative, the story is truly one of a kind that far exceeded its time, and the game has stood the test of time for good reason. Shadow of the Colossus is truly an all-time classic that deserves your playthrough. If you haven't downloaded it yet, what are you doing? Let's go take down some Colossi. As always, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's video, you probably enjoy some other videos on my channel here. I upload every other week and would appreciate your support. Please be sure to like and subscribe and leave a comment. Thanks again for watching. Until next time.